Do you think London hotels are all about luxury and comfort? Think again. Some of the city's most iconic hotels have a much darker side, with reports of paranormal activity galore. Join us as we check into 3 of London's most haunted hotels and uncover the chilling true stories behind them. From the hotel that left a national cricket team in a state of terror, to a famous literary guest still writing his best-selling novel, and the scene of a terrible murder that left one man twice wronged and forever seeking justice. Buckle up, because you won't want to check in alone. It was the summer of 2014, and England's cricket team was going through a patch of significant upheaval. Fresh from a humiliating Ashes whitewash in Australia, the team faced a tough rebuilding process, made that much harder by the controversial omission of Kevin Pietersen from the squad. On the field, the English team was struggling for consistency across all formats, but off the field, they faced even greater challenges of the paranormal variety. Convinced that a luxury base would set their players up for renewed sporting success, the England and Wales Cricket Board booked rooms at the Langham Hotel, located in London's West End and renowned as one of the capital's finest 5-star establishments. The Langham was opened in 1865 by the Prince of Wales, before going on to host many of the greats of Victorian high society, including literary giants such as Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, and Sherlock Holmes creator Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In terms of comfort and quality, the ECB would have been hard-pressed to find a better place to accommodate their players. Yet, all wasn't well at Camp England. Aware of the hotel's haunted reputation and of several unsettling reports from the players themselves, many of the wives and girlfriends had refused to stay there, instead paying for rooms at nearby hotels or commuting to London on match days. One night, during the Sri Lanka Test, England fast bowler Stuart Broad couldn't sleep. His room felt hot and airless, and he couldn't quite shake the feeling that someone, or something, was in there with him. He tossed and turned for some time before glancing at the clock. It was 1:30 a.m. and the hotel was silent. It had been a busy day and he was in luxurious surroundings. There was no reason for him to be struggling with sleep and battling such feelings of unease. He reached out for a drink of water, wondering if the unsettled feeling was just a consequence of dehydration. And then, something happened that stopped him in his tracks. All of a sudden, the taps in the bathroom came on. Puzzled, Broad turned the lights on, now convinced that there was someone else in the room. Immediately, the taps turned themselves off. Broad paused. Could the sound have come from the next room? Convinced that he was hearing things, he turned the light back off. Once again, the bathroom taps started running. This time, Broad turned all the lights back on. He picked up his phone and saw that teammate Matt Pryor was online and evidently awake, so he decided to reach out. It transpired that Pryor had been experiencing exactly the same creeped out feelings, and so it was that 2 of Britain's sporting giants found themselves having to share a twin room that night for safety. They were far from being the only ones to report unexplained activity on the notorious 3rd floor of the Langham. Back in 1973, BBC radio announcer James Alexander Gordon was staying at the ominously numbered room 333 when he woke in the night to see a bright orb which slowly took on the shape of a man wearing Victorian evening wear. Initially, the radio announcer felt bold enough to ask the ghost what it wanted. But when it began to float towards him, with its legs cut off some 2 feet below the ground, arms outstretched, eyes staring emptily, James Alexander Gordon lost his nerve and fled. More recently, popular YouTubers Sam and Colby made their way to the UK for an overnight stay at the haunted room 333. As well as feeling the bed being moved by an invisible force, they too experienced the sudden increase in temperature that Stuart Broad had reported, and with the help of an EMF meter, they detected paranormal energy around the bathroom mirror. The ghosts of the Langham are numerous, although some, like the spirit spotted by James Alexander Gordon in room 333, have been identified. According to legend, the grey-haired Victorian gentleman in a cloak and cravat with a terrifying blank staring expression was once a German doctor who killed his wife before ending his own life while on honeymoon at the hotel. There are also reports of a suicidal soldier reliving his final desperate act, a beefy German prince who once jumped out of a fourth-floor window, and a man who roams the hallways with a gaping wound in the middle of his face. In light of this, many would argue that the Langham's reputation as one of London's most haunted hotels is well deserved. Is it all just coincidence? Or is there truly something supernatural lurking in the shadows of this iconic establishment? Brown's Hotel, a cornerstone of London's Mayfair, has stood as a testament to opulence and refinement since the 19th century. For generations, its elegant facade and impeccable service have drawn a select clientele of royalty, celebrities and discerning travellers. Yet beneath the veneer of luxury, a darker history lurks. The hotel's reputation as a haunt for the paranormal is as remarkable as its illustrious guest list, with tales of ghostly encounters reported by both staff and guests for decades. At the heart of these spectral occurrences lies the tragic story of Caroline, a young maid whose life was tragically cut short. According to legend, she plummeted to her death from a high-floor window, leaving her spirit forever bound to the hotel. Disembodied whispers, inexplicable cold spots, and the chilling sensation of being watched are commonplace at Brown's. There are also some unfortunate souls who claim to have seen Caroline's ghostly figure gliding through the corridors, providing guests and staff with a haunting reminder of her untimely demise. Perhaps the most famous of Brown's spectral residents, though, is celebrated writer Rudyard Kipling. Kipling became so fond of the hotel that from the day he was married until his death 44 years later, he regarded it as a second home. Since his death in 1936, guests have reported hearing the distinct clatter of typewriter keys emanating from the room once occupied by Kipling, even when empty. Whether these tales are mere fabrications or evidence of a supernatural presence is a matter for individual interpretation. However, one thing is certain: Brown's is more than just a luxurious hotel. It is a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead appear to blur, creating an atmosphere of intrigue and unease that lingers long after checkout. The Savoy Hotel, a gilded cage of luxury, has stood tall since 1889. A brainchild of theatrical mastermind Richard D'Oyly Carte, it was and continues to be a haven for the rich and famous. From Winston Churchill to Marilyn Monroe, royalty to rock stars, the Savoy has played host to history's most iconic figures over the decades. Although while its Art Deco grandeur and culinary excellence are legendary, what truly sets this hotel apart is the sheer volume of paranormal experiences reported by staff and guests. Stay tuned and you'll learn why this is an establishment where you might want to take the stairs. There are more than a few ghost stories that echo through the Savoy's opulent corridors, but the most infamous one is that of the enigmatic man in grey, who is often seen disappearing through a wall in the hotel's tapestry room. This is believed to be the tragic spirit of an Egyptian aristocrat who was murdered at the Savoy by his own wife in 1923 and is yet to find peace. Considering the circumstances behind the murder, it stands to reason that the spirit of Ali Kamel Fahmy would be a little restless. But with this one, it's best to start in the summer of 1923, when Fahmy and his new wife, French socialite Marguerite Alibert, were enjoying a London honeymoon with 8 booked rooms at the Savoy. It was July the 9th, and the couple and their secretary had enjoyed a thoroughly pleasant evening watching a performance of, ironically, The Merry Widow. Once they were back at the hotel, they had a late supper, which then culminated with one of their regular rows. This was the last anyone saw or heard from Fahmy again, because at 2:30 a.m. he'd been shot from behind multiple times by his new wife, with a bullet striking him in the neck, back and head. It was clear that Alibert was under no immediate threat when the trigger was pulled, yet the court case turned out to be anything other than straightforward. During the 5-day trial, the racism of the day played out in Ali Bear's successful defence, where she told the court of the brutality and beastliness of her Oriental husband. But there was a lot more to the case than this. The bottom line is that Ali Bear would have been acquitted, regardless of the race of her murdered husband. Beautiful as she wasn't quite what might have been considered marriage material back then, with a long and intriguing past as a high-class escort. Ironically, it was this scandalous background that helped ensure her freedom. For while Ali Bear wasn't a woman with skeletons in her closet per se, what she did have was a long and distinguished client list that included none other than the Prince of Wales himself. Extremely personal and incriminating letters had been exchanged by the two at the height of their steamy affair, and Ali Bear was still in possession of some. In light of this, the trial judge disallowed any mention of Ali Bear's past, ensuring that the name of the Prince of Wales was kept firmly out of proceedings. Ali Bear went on to be acquitted of the crime and was allowed to move on with the rest of her life. Ali Fahmy, on the other hand, remains trapped between the two worlds, a victim of a gross miscarriage of justice, condemned to roam this final location for the rest of time. Ali Fahmy isn't the only ghostly resident to send shivers down the spine at the Savoy though. Strange sounds, inexplicable movements and eerie encounters with a woman in white are commonplace. And then there are the lifts. If you're already a nervous elevator passenger, you'd be wise to take the stairs at the Savoy. Guests and staff have reported chilling tales of the spirit of a young girl who said not only to frequent room 502, but also to operate one of the hotel's lifts. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the chill factor of these tales is undisputable. So the next time you're planning a stay in London, remember to do your research beforehand. You might just want to avoid checking into these haunted hotspots, especially if you're alone.